A man and his wife go to their honeymoon for their 25th anniversary. As the couple reflected on that magical evening 25 years ago, the wife asked the husband, "When you first saw me undressed in front of you, what was going through your mind?" The husband replied, "All I wanted to do was to bang your brains out and slurp your melons dry." Then, as the wife undressed, she asked, "What are you thinking now?" He replied, "It looks as if I did a pretty good job." A man went to the police station wishing to speak with the burglar who had broken into his house the night before. "You'll get your chance in court," said the desk sergeant. No, insisted the man. "I want to know how he got into the house without waking my wife. I've been trying to do that for years." Jack and Jill were twins who couldn't find dates to the graduation ball. So Miss Jill asked Mr. Jack to go with her. Mr. Jack said, "No, you're my sister." "That's gross." Miss Jill said, "Come on. Promise me if you can't find another date, you'll take me." So Mr. Jack said, "Okay." Well, Mr. Jack couldn't find a date, so he went with Miss Jill. They were just standing by the bar, and Miss Jill asked Mr. Jack to dance. Mr. Jack said, "No, you're my sister. That's gross." Miss Jill said, "Come on. It'll be fun." So Mr. Jack said, "Okay," and they had a great time. After the dance, Miss Jill asked Mr. Jack to take her to Lover's Lane. Mr. Jack said, "No, you're my sister." "It would be really gross," Miss Jill said. "We'll just talk." "We don't talk anymore." So Mr. Jack said, "Okay." They were at Lover's Lane talking when Miss Jill moved to the back seat and said, "Come on, Mr. Jack, take me." Mr. Jack didn't argue. When Mr. Jack moved on top of Miss Jill murmured, "You're a lot lighter than Dad." Mr. Jack said, "I know. Mum told me last night." One Sunday, a pastor asked his congregation to consider giving a little extra in the offering plate. He said that whoever gave the most would be able to pick out 3 hymns. After the offering plates were passed, the pastor glanced down and noticed that someone had contributed a $1,000 bill. He was so excited that he immediately shared his joy with his congregation and said he'd like to personally thank the person who had placed the money in the plate. A very quiet, elderly, saintly widow shyly raised her hand. The pastor asked her to come to the front. Slowly, she made her way to the pastor. He told her how wonderful it was that she gave so much and asked her to pick out 3 hymns. Her eyes brightened as she looked over the congregation, pointed to the 3 handsomest men in the building and exclaimed, "I'll take him, and him, and him." One day, Mr. Einstein has to speak at an important science conference. On the way there, he tells his driver that looks a bit like him, "I'm sick of all these conferences. I always say the same things over and over." The driver agrees, "You're right. As your driver, I attended all of them. And even though I don't know anything about science, I could give the conference in your place." "That's a great idea," says Mr. Einstein. "Let's switch places then." So they switch clothes, and as soon as they arrive, the driver dressed as Mr. Einstein goes on stage and starts giving the usual speech, while the real Mr. Einstein, dressed as the car driver, attends it. But in the crowd, there is one scientist who wants to impress everyone and thinks of a very difficult question to ask Mr. Einstein, hoping he won't be able to respond. So this guy stands up and interrupts the conference by posing his very difficult question. The whole room goes silent, holding their breath, waiting for the response. The driver looks at him, laughs, and says, "Sir, your question is so easy to solve that I'm going to let my driver answer it." A police officer stopped a motorist who was speeding down Main Street. "But officer," the man began, "I can explain." "Just be quiet," snapped the officer. "I'm going to let you cool your heels in jail until the chief gets back." "But, officer, I just wanted to say..." and I said to keep quiet. You're going to jail. A few hours later, the officer looked in on his prisoner and said, Lucky for you that the chief's at his daughter's wedding. He'll be in a good mood when he gets back. Don't count on it, answered the fellow in the cell. I'm the groom. A young man who is very bad with money goes off to college in another state. After only 1 month, he has spent all his money, and he has to ask his father for more. His father agrees to send some money, but warns him that this will be the last loan until next semester. Unfortunately, the boy has spent everything a month later, so he tries to devise a scheme to get more money from his dad. Remembering that his father would do anything for the family dog, the boy calls his father and says, Dad, there's a professor here who will teach Toby to speak for $1,000. After a little persuasion, the father agrees to send Toby to college for speech lessons. After a couple of months, the young man burns through the $1,000, so he calls his father again. This time he says, Dad, Toby did so well with the speech lessons that the professor feels he has the potential to learn how to read as well. It will only cost another $1,000. Again he persuades his father, and the money arrives. Freshman year finally ends, and the father is excited to have his son bring their dog home for the summer so he can hear him talk and watch him read. Desperate to hide his deception, the boy gives away Toby to a nice family and then makes a phone call to his dad. Dad, I've got some bad news for you, but it's a long story, so maybe you should sit down. Silence on the other end of the phone. The son continues. I was in the bathroom shaving, and Toby was in the bathtub reading the New York Times. Suddenly he says, Gee, do you think your mother will ever find out about all the times Dad fucked around with his secretary? I was so surprised that my hand slipped, and I dropped the electric razor in the bathtub. Toby was electrocuted, and he's dead. His father finally breaks the silence on the other end of the phone and says, And you're sure he's really dead? A golfer came home one evening to find his 7-year-old son polishing a new 7-speed bike. Son, where on earth did you find the money to buy such a beautiful bike? Wow, that is some bike. That must have cost $500. Hi, Dad. I earned it taking long walks. Long walks? What are you talking about? Well, every weekend when you're out playing golf, our neighbor Mr. Brown comes over to see Mom. What? Tell me more, son. He gives me $25 and tells me to take a long walk.